to train doctors and nurses, but also to give patients some diversity and some optimism. And as we heard about today, that optimism is very important. And so I give the microphone to Beth.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
No, we have to push the button. It has to be green.
Oh, it has to be green. That's right. So what I'm going to talk to you about today is very different from the topic that we talked about yesterday, which was artificial intelligence. Instead of artificial approach to dealing with your patients or medicine, the idea is further communication and learning to communicate better by using artwork. I work with a woman, her name is Brooke Giovanni Evans, and she's at the Brigham and Women's Hospital, but she also has worked at the Museum of Fine Arts, and what she does, and I'm a part of the program, is work with medical personnel to look at art and in that way improve their communication, not only with each other, but with their patients. And so Brooke couldn't be here, but she will present a video about the program. So I'll begin with that.
Good afternoon. My name is Brooke Giovanni Evans, and I'm excited to be with you today. Thank you to Dr. Stephen Saunders for including me in your conference. I'm looking forward to sharing with you some of the work we're doing in Boston at Brigham and Women's Hospital around visual arts and healthcare training.
Okay. Try to make it a bit
start,
louder.
I just wanted to give you a little bit of background on how I got here.
Can you hear?
I have degrees in art history and education, and I worked in museums for many, many years. I started working with clinicians in about 2011 at the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston. And in 2021, I was recruited to Brigham and Women's Hospital for a new position, which was the Director of Visual Arts Education. Today, I'm going to cover 3 different areas in my presentation. The first is to share the Visual Arts and Healthcare program at Brigham and Women's Hospital and a little bit about that. To explore an art and medicine program example that we have done with nursing residents, and then to discuss some related research with you. I wanted to start with this quote by David Brooks, which says, "Experiences with great artworks deepen us in ways that are hard to describe. Culture teaches us how to see." This was an opinion piece written in the New York Times several months ago, and I thought it spoke to how the arts can humanize us, help us empathize with others, and really notice and observe the world around us. So to start, a healthcare program at Brigham and Women's Hospital, which was founded in 2022 by myself and Dr. Joel Katz. The focus of the program is sort of threefold, and I'll go into that. We are focusing on developing visual arts workshops for clinicians to help with healthcare training. This is for medical school students all the way up to more senior clinicians. We're also focusing on research and writing, looking at the impact of visual arts in healthcare and how that can help enhance training experiences, and looking at developing collaborations and partnerships nationally and locally to really expand this work and to grow the visual arts in healthcare. So to start, this gives you a sense of some of the participants that we've worked with. We've worked with about 10 different medical specialties, also nurses and nursing residents, researchers, and medical school students and faculty from the Harvard Medical School system. To give you a sense of the experiences of participants in the program, here are some quotes from palliative care fellows that participated in a visual arts workshop. The quotes state, or the question asks, what did you take away from this workshop? And the quotes state, differing perspectives can be helpful in patient cases and other aspects of life in ways we never would have pictured. Observe more, talk less, listen more, and take in and embrace the new. Deeper gratitude for the perspectives of my colleagues and the benefits and calming effects of sitting with art. And finally, the final takeaway is to stay open, curious, try not to judge, be kind to myself, be present, avoid assumptions, and ask clarifying questions. This is an example of a research project that we are working on, which focuses on using visual thinking strategies, which I'll discuss in depth in a few more minutes, and clinical reasoning skills. So it's a 4-session curriculum that is focusing on using visual thinking strategies to really enhance clinical reasoning. We're going to talk about data acquisition, problem representation, and hypothesis generation. This is a research project that we are collaborating with the Virginia Commonwealth University as well as the University of North Carolina. And it's based on a pilot project that both our collaborators wrote about in this article that I've referenced on the screen if you'd like to learn a little bit more. Moving into a case study, I wanted to share with you a program that we developed for Brigham and Women's nursing residents as part of their residency curriculum. I worked with the nursing leadership to design this workshop, and that's really a key component of all of these workshops, is that partnership with clinicians in developing the workshops, deciding on the goals, and in many instances, co-facilitating the sessions with the clinicians. So each workshop that I develop has a series of goals that we hope to accomplish. These are the goals for the nursing workshop, which were to enhance relational capacities in the workplace by focusing on interpersonal and communication skills with colleagues, patients, and families, concentrating on active listening, inclusive communication, and hearing multiple perspectives. Also fostering reflection on struggles with professional identity, confidence, and leadership during the residency year. Engaging in team building and community building opportunities through creative activities. And exploring professional identity and the added value of the nursing voice in team-based practice. Finally, we're hoping to expand a curiosity mindset, asking questions, and hearing new perspectives. The first activity that we did with the group was visual thinking strategies. This is a pedagogy that you'll get to practice later with Elizabeth Saunders, but just wanted to give you a bit of a background. This is used in medical training quite a bit, and there are many articles about its implementation. VTS, as it's known, was developed by Abigail Housen, who is a cognitive psychologist at Harvard, and Philip Yenowin, who is a museum educator at the Museum of Modern Art. And it's based on Abigail Housen's research, looking at works of art with participants. It focuses on a facilitated conversation led by trained facilitators where the participants work together to build an interpretation of a work of art. And these are the 3 questions that the facilitator asks of the group throughout the discussion. What is going on in this picture? What do you see that makes you say that? And what more can we find? In the nursing workshop, we started with this for a couple of reasons. It's a good warm-up. These open-ended questions are very accessible. You don't need an art history degree to be able to talk about a work of art to respond to these questions. It also gives us a chance to focus on communication and observation skills, and the group is very much working together as a team and hearing multiple perspectives as they develop their interpretation of this work of art. All of those things were enhanced and discussed in our debrief discussion after this activity. So this slide shows you the process of facilitating a VTS conversation. You start with taking a moment to really look at the work of art silently, just slowing down, giving yourself a chance to kind of settle into your space. Then the facilitator opens the discussion with the question of what's going on in this painting. To encourage evidence building, the second follow-up question is, what do you see that makes you say that? So very much focusing on the fact that there's visual evidence that leads to the observations that are being made, and what is that visual evidence, and discussing that. Throughout the conversation, additional opinions are invited, and the question, what more can we find? And then at the end of the discussion, the groups are thanked for their participation and their comments. One thing that I'd like to highlight is leading a VTS discussion looks very easy, but to do it well, you need training. I've been using this methodology for 12 years, and I'm still learning new things. There are many articles on the use of VTS in healthcare training, and I'll share a couple of those with you at the end. Our second activity was personal response. This is an opportunity to use art as a metaphor and an opportunity for self-reflection. The questions that you ask the group can really depend on the goals of the group. So the activity starts with asking an open-ended question. For example, with intern residents, I often ask them to reflect on how you're feeling about your intern year so far. They then go into the gallery and they find a work of art that answers this question. At the end, after they've each chosen their individual piece, they gather together as a group and discuss works chosen and why they chose them. It's a really nice opportunity for colleagues to learn from one another, share experiences, and know that they're not alone in the experiences they're having. Some of this work is based on the idea created by Parker Palmer of the third thing. This idea suggests that using a work of art or music or a narrative piece, a poem, is an opportunity for self-reflection for individuals. You can share kind of your innermost feelings through the piece and the artwork that you choose. So I'll give you a minute just to try it out. So my question to you is to choose a work of art that reflects how you're feeling at this moment. Which of these 4 works of art would you choose, and why would you choose it? I'll give you a second to kind of think about that. And maybe share with your colleagues what you chose after my presentation. I would definitely encourage you to have that conversation if you would like. So moving on to the final activity in the nursing workshop is back-to-back drawing. For each session that I do, I like to combine both opportunities for discussion and opportunities for hands-on experiences to really vary the learning modalities that people are experiencing during each of the workshops. So for back-to-back drawing, the participants pair up and one person chooses an object and describes it to their partner, who then draws it. The person who is drawing hasn't seen the object prior to sketching it, so they have to rely on their partner to really explain the object, give them enough detail, and help them sort of through the process so that they can sketch something successfully. After each activity, we always reflect on what we've done together and connections back to clinical work. For this activity, some of the connections to clinical work focus on effective communication skills. What were the strategies that the describer used or that the drawer used to be successful in their part of the activity? Thinking about the importance of word choice for effective communication, and also clarifying questions to make sure that both partners understand what is being described and are successful. And this also often translates to talking with patients or other specialties, and how you can effectively communicate across different areas of the hospital and different areas of healthcare, really checking in for understanding with each of the populations that you're working with. So what can art bring to healthcare training? I think art can bring these 4 elements and perhaps others to healthcare training. The clinical skills that it offers is an opportunity to enhance observation skills and communication skills, to focus on teamwork and multiple perspectives. The humanistic capacities that we discuss focus on empathy and curiosity and cultural respect. It can offer a safe opportunity for problem solving, thinking creatively and differently in new environments, dealing with ambiguity and uncertainty, again in a safe space. And finally, an opportunity for wellness and self-care. These activities focus on personal reflection, slowing down, and connecting with colleagues throughout the workshop. As I work with participants, I notice their shoulders drop as they move from the beginning of the exercise to the end of the workshop together, really kind of settling in and relaxing from the high-stress environment of being in the hospital. I think art focuses on our human experience and allows us to sort of form connections with one another. It also provides alternative modes of learning, understanding, and expressing ideas. So what is some of the research that supports this work? I wanted to share 2 reports that focus on that today. One is a seminal report, I feel, that was written in 2018 called Branches from the Same Tree. It comprehensively outlines the role of the humanities in science, engineering, and medicine. It reviews existing literature and also gaps in the literature and areas that need more study. A couple of examples pulled from the report. One talks about the goals of the medical humanities curriculum, which are to ingrain aspects of professionalism, empathy, and altruism, to enhance clinical communication and observation skills, to increase professionalism and collaboration, and to decrease burnout and compassion fatigue. It also talks about some of the research that has resulted in studying the visual arts in healthcare. One talks about visual thinking strategies, which we just discussed, and its role in developing critical thinking, communication, and visual literacy. And after taking a course focused on visual thinking strategies in medical education, students were able to make more observations than a peer control group. Also, medical students, physicians, and nurses all benefit in a statistically significant manner from courses designed to educate visual observation skills through the studies that are cited here. There is a quote at the beginning of the report that is affirmed, I think, at the end. The report states, Albert Einstein once said, "All religions, arts, and sciences are branches from the same tree." This holistic view of human knowledge and inquiry as fundamentally connected is reflected in the history of higher education, from the traditions of Socrates and Aristotle to the era of industrialization to the present day. This view holds that a broad and interwoven education is essential to the preparation of citizens for life, work, and civic participation. A second example that I wanted to share with you today is from the Association of American Medical Colleges, the AAMC, that was written in 2020. It's the FRAME report, which is the fundamental role of the arts and humanities in medical education. It was based on a scoping review of published quantitative studies commissioned by the authors and extensive discussions on arts and humanities in medical training. One thing that resulted from the work was the PRISM model, which was developed by Tracy Moniz, and it focuses on the 4 areas that have been part of arts and humanities curriculum in medical training. Those areas are mastering skills, really helping learners to acquire knowledge and skills relevant to clinical care, perspective taking, focusing on making visible through interaction and dialogue the sometimes contradictory perspectives of people involved in clinical encounters, personal insight, focusing on fostering awareness and reflection, social advocacy, focusing on social issues and inciting the learner to question, critique, and transform norms, as well as potential inequities and injustices in healthcare. I've referenced the article below if you would like to read some more. The FRAME report offers some great examples of what this can look like in practice through programs that are in existence today. I also want to share some articles that have been published in medical journals that support the topics that I've discussed today. There's more getting published each year in medical humanities, and it's an exciting growth area. But here are just a few that I often use in my work and reference quite extensively in presentations and with clinicians. In addition, these are some articles that we've published in medical journals since starting the Visual Arts and Healthcare program. All of these articles are linked on our website, along with other resources. If you'd like to learn more, I listed the website below. So I would encourage you to reach out with questions, or if you'd like to learn more about the work I'm doing, or a partner on a future program. I'm excited always to connect with colleagues and with clinicians about this work. And I want to thank you for inviting me to come today. I hope I can join you in person in the future. Ciao.
So first of all, if anybody has any questions about the program, if you have questions about the program, I can certainly try to answer them. but if there are no questions from the audience right now, what I'd like to do is experiment with you all and try out visual thinking strategies by looking at an image from the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston. So we'll take a moment to look at the image. I want you to start at the top of the image, go to the bottom of the image, go to the right side, the left side, look at the foreground, look at the background, and take a moment. And without giving you any information about the artist or the image, I'm going to ask you, what's going on in this image? Can you see it, Michael? Okay, yes, what's going on in this image?
This couple was doing something and they were interrupted.
Okay, so you're looking at, you notice that there are two people. You're assuming that they are perhaps a couple, and you believe that they were interrupted, that somebody came, somebody questioned, something happened that interrupted them, that somebody called them perhaps, maybe the phone rang, something like that. So they were interrupted. The cell phone. Where is the cell phone in the image? What more can we find?
I personally noticed the difference for me. The expression of the faces is really different for me, because in the woman expression, she seems a little bit astonished or surprised by something, touching maybe the husband, or I don't know, someone really close. So it's a little bit of fear and surprise, while the man actually seems just sad, not surprised at all. It's quite calm. It's in a resting position without any sudden gesture.
Right. So what do you see that makes you say that she's particularly upset?
Yeah, and anxious.
And anxious, yes. And what do you see that makes you say that?
For the expression of the eyes.
Her eyes?
Eyes, and also the hands position, the hands on the face and on the shoulder of the husband.
Yeah. So you're noticing that her hand is on her face, you're noticing her expression, and then you also noticed that she's reaching out to the person you're assuming is her spouse.
Yeah, precisely.
What more can we find? Yes, why do you assume that it, what do you see that makes you say
Husband
it's her
or lover?
husband?
Husband or lover, I don't know. But someone really close in any case.
Okay. We have,
To me, they look sad. I think something bad may have happened in the family. I don't know.
so you think you're noticing that they are unhappy, and you're wondering what may have happened that caused this unhappiness. Okay.
The thing that impressed me first was the background, where they're sitting, where they're standing. So if we look at the background, they're sitting at a table and they're also in a forest. So it's, we can see trees, and the black shadow is that of a big tree behind them. So it's where is the setting, which is surreal.
Okay, so you're wondering, where are they? You notice that they have furniture, but then you're thinking about the background and wondering, are they in
Correct.
fact outside? Are they in the woods?
So that would be the first, and then the second is, as Francesca said, is the reaction of the two, male and female, is different to whatever is happening in front of them. So the
Okay.
feelings of the two people are.
So you're noticing also that the two protagonists have different feelings, and you're noticing the male is different from the female.
Correct. Different real.
I think he also looks unsettled, not as expressing as she does in her face, but he's turned sideways in a chair. I don't think he was sitting like that before, whoever interrupted them or demanded the attention. And I wonder, what is this? Is this a trunk in the foreground that he's leaning on? It just seems like an odd angle.
Okay, so you're noticing his position is somewhat uncomfortable, and you're wondering what he's leaning on, and so you're finding that as well as the other people have noticed that there's something uncomfortable about what is going on with these people, you're also noticing that his body position reinforces that for you.
I mean, we commented already on the position of the hands of the woman, but I think also the hands of the man are really striking, because there's his right hand, that caused my attention first.
Okay, so again, you're noticing on their hands, the different positions of their hands, but particularly his right hand, you are wondering why it's positioned just so. What more can we find?
Tell us some. No.
I'm sure you saw the handkerchief on the table, the white napkin, and it might seem that maybe she was crying and drying her tears with the napkin, maybe. Maybe that's why the napkin is there.
So Umbi has noticed a very small detail of a white piece of cloth seemingly on the table, and wondering, could it be a handkerchief? Could she have been upset and crying? What more can we find? So if we have no more comments, typically we don't necessarily resolve what we're seeing in the image. You are left with your questions and wondering, but I think for this particular audience, it might be interesting to know about these individuals and what has happened. The painting is by Edouard Degas, and the woman is his sister, and the gentleman is her husband. And the idea of this interruption, I think, is very interesting in that they had just discovered that their infant child had died. So I think we've noticed, because I think of your sensitivity to having discussions with parents, I think your reactions were really reinforced that you have an understanding of the dealing with parents of a young child. And with that, I think we can... The title of the painting is, very simply, El Mando e Teresa Morbile. So it doesn't have a description, only the names of the people. And it's by Edgar Degas, and it was painted in about 1865. Now, typically when you do visual thinking strategies, we really don't necessarily share the details of the painting. But I think it's kind of helpful to be left with some resolution as well. So with that, I think it's time to move on to our next presentation.
Thank you very much.
And how do I turn it off? I want to just Thank you.
No, put the microphone on, please.
Will it? Because I get bored at my own talks if I sit, but I can try to stand. Okay. So yeah, let's see if it works. Before I start, I have to come up with a disclosure. So I'm not an MD, unlike what my tag says. I'm an engineer. So this will be really the point of view of an engineer on rehabilitation, which is probably quite different from what you are used to. And again, before I start going into the heart of this topic, I should clarify that term. I'm sure that some of you know very well what sport climbing is. I'm also sure that some of you have no idea of what sport climbing is. And let me start by making sure that we all agree on what I mean by sport climbing. So if you have been watching TV lately, maybe Netflix or Disney Channel, you may have seen that. Alex Honnold is a great athlete, climbing a 1,000-meter wall without rope, risking his life on camera. Or maybe you were watching TV in the 1990s and then you saw that. Those are parts of the climbing world. That's not what modern sport climbing is. Sport climbing, to most people who do it today, is more like this. So first of all, it is an activity that is mostly done indoor. So it's a sport that most people do in a climbing gym, and nowadays, oftentimes they no longer go to the mountains, but just happens in a climbing gym. Second, it is very popular among even very young kids. So climbing classes now start as young as 4-year-old, okay, sometimes even earlier. And it is essentially a safe physical activity. The risk factor there is in line with any other physical activity, okay. It is also a very quickly growing sport. So 20 years ago, there were a few crazy people climbing up mountains. Nowadays, it's becoming extremely popular, at least in some regions in Europe and North America. Those are a couple of statistics from the United States and Germany, because that's what I found around. I was told informally by the organizers of the sporting activities in my university that, according to the latest interviews they run, it is now the second most common sport among the students of our university. I'm from Politecnico di Milano. We have 47,000 students in Milan, northern Italy. So that's a pretty good statistic on what university students do, at least in the Milan area. Again, we are close to the Alps, so we are probably more prone to mountaineering kind of sports than other area in Italy and the world, but it's becoming a popular activity. Okay, so it's if you want a common physical activity like many other sports. It does have, however, something that sets it apart from many other sports, in that the climber, and especially the climbing child, during the exercise often feels somewhat like that Alex Honnold. So the feeling that you get when you are on the wall, even though you may be standing, half a meter from the ground, is something similar to what you could imagine that guy is feeling 1,000 meters above the ground. There is a very strong emotional factor that kicks in when you leave the ground, even though you don't go too far. And that can be used, so that emotional effect can be used to have an effect on the psychology, the cognitive aspects of the climber, of the child, or or to have an effect on its physical abilities and exercise. And for that reason, recently there is starting to be a new subdomain within climbing, which is called therapeutic climbing, where different teams around the world are trying to use this activity and the cognitive and emotional effects that it has as part of, or including the activity in a more articulate and wider therapies in order to obtain some effect on the kids or the patients. So this idea of therapeutic climbing is becoming a domain, a name in the literature, at least. So it's within this, is on this background, essentially, that I started, that I worked on a couple of projects over the past few years, and those are the experiences which I will talk about today. The first project, called ACCEPT, Adaptive Climbing for Cerebral Palsy Training, started in 2019 and finished in 2021. And the second project started a little later and is still ongoing. So let me start from the first one, the ACCEPT project. In that case, the starting point was, as it often happens in research, guided by chance and serendipity. So in the 2018-2019, in my spare time, I was working on the design of a force sensor to be inserted in climbing holes. So I'm a climber myself and an engineer, and I was trying to design a force sensor that could be used in climbing holes in order to help us study and analyze human motion on the climbing wall. And I was in contact with Fight the Stroke, which is a foundation in Milan who helps kids with cerebral palsy. They support their family in many ways, but in particular, they run a program 1 week per year where they they involve the kids in physical activities, intensive physical activities for the whole week, and then support the families into seeking opportunities for physical activities throughout the year. So they push a lot the idea of giving this kid the opportunity to do sports and physical activities as part of their rehabilitation. Well, at that time, within our university, there was a funding program called Polysocial, which every year changes theme. And that year, in 2019, the theme was sport and social inclusion. And essentially, they were handing out 100K, so not too much, for studies on technologies for inclusive sport and mobility. Okay, so they were asking groups within the university to propose technology that could be used as support for inclusion and mobility for people with disability in general. So we partnered with Fight the Stroke, and we set out to try to use the technology that I had started working and adapt it to do something useful for the kids that they were working for. The project, which came to be named ACCEPT, was based on this idea. So the problem, the motivation, let's say, that emerged through some exchanges and talks with the people from Fight the Stroke and the therapists that were working with them, was that the kids they were supporting first of all, they have a hard time finding opportunities for sport. But then, even when they do, they have a hard time keeping up with doing that activity and sport throughout their youth. So they need a lot of motivation in order to continue in the rehabilitation program from the very early age up to adulthood. And some of those kids are fantastic, and they keep exercising like crazy throughout the years. But many of them lose motivation eventually, and they just accept their own status of people with disability, and they essentially stop, or at least reduce the amount of the effort they put on rehabilitation. So we were looking for a way to motivate them and maybe give them some, if possible, quantitative feedback on the effects of what they're doing, which could help their therapist give them better therapists, but also could help them see if what they're doing is having an effect on their ability or disability, or whatever you want to, whichever way you want to see it. So the basic question that we asked was, we have a means for analyzing motion on the climbing wall, in particular by analyzing the forces of contact of the climber with the wall. Can we use this and maybe some other sensors to quantify some metric, some degree of motion impairment while the kids are climbing? So not by doing a standardized exercise like a clinical evaluation, but just let them play and then give them a score based on how they play. So we put up the necessary technology with which in that case consisted of this. So we had this climbing wall, which was 3.6 meters wide by 2.5 meters. We made it small, in particular because we had, so everything in the design of the wall was came out of let's say, of a discussion, of a co-design process with the therapist and the people who follow these kids. And we understood that we had to, so that the environment in which the kids played needed to be small enough that the therapist or the supporter of the kid could be close to the kid at any time during the game, so that the kid would never be afraid or scared of being alone or too far from the ground. So the wall was quite small. We chose a neutral background to avoid problems with over-stimulating the kids. We chose the position of the holds and the shape of the holds and the orientation according to the exercises that the therapists were suggesting. So for instance, they told us that those particular kids needed to train their reaching abilities and their grasping abilities and pronosupination and extension of the shoulder and so on. And so we planned the position of the holds and the distance between holds in order to suggest or try to, not force, but push the kids to execute this kind of exercises during the game without having to tell them explicitly to do that kind of motion. And then in terms of technology, we included the sensors, the force sensors in the hole. So you can see at the center, the central panel has those circles. Those are, the sensors are hidden in those circles. Sensors would be, the force sensors would be communicating the force data via Wi-Fi on an app, which allowed us to see the force signal live during the experiment, to log it and to analyze it afterwards. And then we had a 2D motion capture system and IMU sensors. So what are this? The markerless motion capture system is simply a camera with a neural network which allows us to reconstruct the pose of the child as the child is moving in front of the camera. So this is an example in the lab. This was done offline, so after the experiment, and it allowed us to, well, in principle, we were hoping to use this to extract information about the ability of the child to move. In practice, the 2D data was not precise enough to get a reliable metric, so we used it for another reason I'll tell you later. And then we tried also to use IMUs. An IMU's inertial measurement unit is essentially an orange box that you attach on your forearms and arms, and it should have allowed us, in fact, to measure the range of motion of the arms, of the upper and lower arm, during the game. Once again, this was our hope initially. This was a pilot study, so we were trying a lot of things. In the end, what we found out is that in that context, the signal from these sensors was too noisy, and we couldn't obtain reliable data from these sensors. So we set out to run the experiment. Overall, so we attached our experiment to the week-long program that Fight the Strokes organizes every year. There were 20 children with cerebral palsy involved that year, but only 8 met the inclusion criteria of our study, which were to have GMFCS, so Gross Motor Function Classification Scale 1 and 2, which means mild motor disability. Hemiplegic by perinatal stroke, we had 4 right and 4 left hemiplegic kids. No additional condition, and we required a written approval by the physician. The sporting activities lasted 6 days. We spent, and of course the kids were doing climbing, but also many other activities during the day. We spent the first 3 days essentially fine-tuning the system so that it worked reasonably, and then the last 3 days we collected the data. And the kids were climbing twice a day, so we have 2 repetitions of the game for each kid. So for each one of these repetitions, we, as I mentioned before, we planned carefully the game that was proposed to the kid. So we started from the suggestion from the therapist. So what kind of exercise do you want us to suggest? What do you want the kids to work on reaching? Should they work on pronosupination? Should they work on what? Then we collected statistics on the anthropometric parameters of the kids, and then we planned the positioning of the holds and the task that would be suggested to the kids in order to try to push the kids to do the exercises that the therapist had requested us. So every day we'll be reconfiguring the whole wall in order to meet slightly different, essentially to push the kids to do slightly different kinds of activities. Now, as I mentioned before, our objective here was to test whether we could obtain a measure of the disability not by a lab test, not by a standardized exercise, but just by observing the kid during an unstructured game. So the activity, what we told the kid was very simple, something like start here, reach that hold, do whatever you want in the meanwhile, okay? And then by looking at what happens at the signal that we collect from the sensors, we wanted to see whether we could quantify the measure of disability. This is my son, it's not actually, doesn't have CP, but for, yeah, this was during the setup. So, data analysis. As I told you, in the end, we had to discard the IMU data because it was too noisy, and we also had to give up on our attempt to use the 2D motion capture as a source of data itself, because the two-dimensional projection of the joint angles was not sufficient to essentially evaluate, to give any meaningful evaluation of the motor performance of the kids. What we found useful was to track the forces that the kids exerted on the sensorized holds. Then using the 2D motion capture, we knew whether a hold was being touched with the right or left hand or right or left leg. So we know what limb is generating what force at what time. So we knew exactly what each child had done with the right hand, with the left hand, with the right foot, with the left foot. Okay. Then we extracted some synthetic indices from those 4 signals, and in particular the 2 ones that ended up working better was the maximum force that the child had generated with the right, left arm or leg during the game, and the mean value of the force that was generated during the game. We tested our ability to essentially differentiate between the more and the less affected limb via standard ANOVA analysis. And what we found out is this. So essentially, we in the end, we wanted to see whether via our sensors, we could tell the more from the less affected arm and the more from the less affected leg. Remember that the children were all hemiplegic, so we had a side. Well, for the arms, both indices work in distinguishing the more and the less affected side. So the children generate a reliably, statistically different signal with the more and the less affected arm, whereas in the legs, things are not as simple. So in practice, even though one leg was more affected than the other, the way they use them confuses the data. So that's not something that we can measure using the kind of technology that we used. So wrapping up, what we learned from this experience is that, well, using that technology, essentially, those set of sensors, we can see we can measure something quantitative which is somehow related to the disabilities or to the disability of the child. Of course, this is just the first step, because the fact that we can measure something that is related doesn't mean that, for instance, the quantity correlates with the evolution of the children's motor ability in time. We still don't know that. So the next step will be to set up a longitudinal study where we involve the kids not for 1 week, but for a few years. And we track whether that quantity correlates with the way the child is evolving through physiotherapy and through whatever the child is doing during those years. So at the end of the EXCET project 2021, we started looking for a way to do this. We finally found a hospital in Turin. Regina Margherita was willing to participate. So we found a team, found the funding, and we are stuck with the ethical committee since forever. So eventually, we will hopefully start with the study, but we haven't been able to start yet. So that's work in progress. The team involved in this project was composed by me. Marita is a designer at Politecnico, and then we had a friend of mine who's a mechanical engineer and helped designing the sensors, plus PhD students and other personnel in Politecnico, together with all the personnel from Fight the Stroke, so all the therapists and doctors that revolve around the foundation that organized the week-long physical activity. The second project that I'm talking about is a much larger project. So this is 3+ million funding from the Regione Lombardia, which has involved 20-something academics and a lot of other people. Here we were able to recruit a lot more kids than in the first project, but really the bit I'm talking about today is only a small portion of this very large project and goes under the name of Magic Climbing, which is the technology that you see in the photograph on the right. So this time, the starting point, so the enabling technology, let's say, or the seed from which we started to design the technology was this. So an interactive multisensory environment is essentially, imagine a room equipped with sensors and actuators which can sense what you do within the room and react to your actions in order to provoke some moods, maybe, or to suggest some actions, or to facilitate some interaction, and so on. Interactive multisensory environments are being used as means to support essentially the rehabilitation of people with cognitive disabilities, mostly. And we thought, so it's been validated, or it is being validated as a support for rehabilitation of people with different cognitive conditions. And we thought, why don't we try to add a more relevant physical ingredient, a physical aspect to a standard multisensory environment, and see whether we can pair the benefits of physical activity to the positive effect on cognitive, on cognition of a multisensory environment. And so we thought about designing Magic Climbing, which is essentially a multisensory environment with a climbing wall on one of the 4 walls of the interactive room. The experimental question that we investigated in this first iteration of Magic Climbing was this. So far in multisensory environments, there has been very little physical activity, and they are known to have certain positive effects, for instance, on favoring the evolution of social behaviors between kids that play within them. So if we add an important physical factor, so if we make those kids climb, for instance, will that affect the behavior of the kids, and how will that affect especially the social behavior of the kids? So will it reduce or improve the social behavior? Will they interact differently, and how differently, and so on? So the technology this time was composed of, well, once again, the sensorized climbing wall, essentially the same thing that you saw before, plus 2 projectors, one projecting onto the wall, so the front projector, and one projecting on the ground. That way we can draw whatever we want on the wall and on the ground and make it react with the actions of the kids. Then we have, well, this time a 3D motion capture system, so we can track the motion of the children in 3D. We learned from our errors, and we no longer do 2D. We have a sound system, so that the room can play sounds. That's important, for instance, to cheer up the kids when they complete the task successfully. We have a microphone, which we use for tracking whatever the kids say, and we later analyzed all the spoken, all they said during the game. Then we had to enroll 2 PhD students to track by hand the behavioral events, so whatever the kids did was tracked by one of the 2 PhD students using an app that was designed on purpose to classify all the possible behavioral events. And then we had a bubble machine, which was important, again, to cheer up the kids when they completed the task successfully. We run 2 experiments. So in the first experiment, we had 125 children from 1st and 2nd grade, of which 15 were atypical. Atypical means that it had some sort of condition. We were not allowed, because of privacy, to precisely know what the condition is. Mostly they were either with autism, so they were mostly cognitive conditions. Experiment 2 involved 199 children from 3rd to 5th grade with 16 atypical kids. We are still analyzing the data from the 2nd experiment, so I'm going to talk about the 1st experiment only. In that case, so in the 1st experiment, we let the children play in pairs, so there were also always 2 children in the room, and they were playing in both cases, both in the control condition and in the experimental condition. They were playing sort of a memory game where you have to find matching pairs of cards. Okay. In the control condition, the cards were projected on the ground. One child, which we call the guide, was the first one to turn a card, and then the memorizer, the other child, had to find the matching card. Okay. In the experimental condition, the game was the same, but the matching card would be on the wall, so the memorizer had to climb the wall, reach the hold on which the card was located, and pull as strongly as he or she could on the hold in order to turn the card. So we added a physical effort in the task of turning the card, essentially. We call MEM the first experiment, and MEM star the 2nd experiment. And then we collected data. So the first set of data that we collected were questionnaires that we handed out to the children after each one of the 2 experiences. Okay, so after MEM or MEM star, in the form of a smile meter, so from very sad to very happy. And the questions were, did you like the game? So we explored likability. Did you understand how to play? So the task comprehension. Was it easy to play the game? So ease of task. Were you good at playing the game? So the self-efficacy. And did you play with the other children? So how they perceived cooperation during the task. Then we collected behavioral data. That's what the two PhD students did. We eventually came up with 22 behavioral signals. These are things like offering help with a tool, offering help verbally, complaining about the game. So there are all sorts of behavioral events. And we essentially counted how many times each event happened during each game. And then the third set of data that we collected was derived from the microphone recordings. We counted how long the kids were talking, how many words they uttered, how many interrogative clauses they pronounced, and how many non-interrogative clauses, and how many turn switches they took. A turn switch means I ask you something, you reply, I reply, you reply. These are turn switches. And then we analyze all these data statistically. As usual, again, with ANOVA. Well, actually, we ran two kind of tests in this case. So remember, we had a very large population, but the population of atypical kids was once again fairly small. So 16 in one case, 15 in the other case. So rather than analyzing the atypical population by itself, which would be a rather weak statistic, we ran the statistics on the full population, and then we tested the similarity of the distribution of the small population with the global population to check whether the conclusions that we draw from the large and more powerful statistic is likely to hold on the smaller and less powerful population statistic. So for this, to run this check, we used a paired two-sample t-test. So results. From the smilometers, first observation is that the scores were all very high. So the kids enjoyed the game and it was all fun and okay. So the experience was pretty good. The interesting thing is this. So essentially all the questions, for all the questions, the difference between the two conditions was irrelevant, so statistically non-significant, with the exception of Q2, did you understand? No, oh yeah, Q2 and Q3, so did you understand and was it easy to play the game, where they found it harder to understand the climbing game and harder to play the climbing game. So by looking at the results of Q1, did you like it? And Q2 and Q3 together, we see that the kids had a harder time understanding how to play when there was climbing involved. They had a harder time playing when there was climbing involved. So they perceived a greater challenge in the climbing game, but they enjoyed it the same. Actually slightly more, but not statistically significant. So the game was just as enjoyable, but more challenging for the kids in some way. So let's see what we can understand from, this was their perception. What can we understand from looking at their behavior instead? So let me skip the numbers because it's quite hard to decipher, to decode a message from here. And let me summarize what comes out of those statistics. So we had, on the one hand, MEM, the game without climbing. On the other hand, on the other side, the game with climbing. So going from without climbing to with climbing, we found less non-verbal communication. So the children were communicating to each other using less gestures, less non-verbal channels, but they were using more verbal communication. Okay, so essentially their means of communicating between the two kids in the couple moved from from non-verbal to verbal. That's probably quite obvious because one of the two kids was busy climbing and he couldn't really, I mean, it was challenged, physically challenged and had to use some other means of communication. However, they pronounced roughly the same number of sentences with and without climbing. The thing is, so they were talking more, but with the same number of sentences. What was happening, and this we see from studying the number of words, is that each sentence was more complex. So they were communicating more complex, more articulate messages during the climbing game. So essentially, the introduction of the more challenging physical activity triggered a richer form of communication. So the way they were interacting verbally and socially became more complex. And this is what is interesting from the point of view of rehabilitation, we observe a similar variation in these scores within the typical population and the atypical population. So probably also the atypical population had an increase in the, of course, a relative increase in the complexity of the spoken messages. Okay, the team this time was a bit larger. It was me, Franca Gazzotto is a professor in computer sciences. She's the expert in multisensory environments, and then a few PhD students, and again, a lot of extra personnel that's not listed here, doctors and therapists, and a lot of support staff, which made it possible to handle 300 kids in the university for 2 weeks, essentially. What did we learn from these experiences so far? First thing is that, we haven't published on these two things yet, other than a few abstracts. So it's quite hard to publish these results, mostly because of the small population size, especially for the first experiment, but also for the second experiment, because the population size on the typical kids is not large. So you probably know that very well, but population size is a very big limitation, and having a large population of kids with cerebral palsy, for instance, is quite complex, especially if you want to involve them in unusual activities such as climbing. The second thing is that both projects were made possible by the chance of having funding that was explicitly directed to a social impact, okay? So these kind of projects are not easily funded by standard research funds because they don't have a huge scientific impact, not immediately at least. They don't have an obvious business interest, so industries are not particularly interested in investing in this. So it's quite, they don't fit well in most standard funding schemes. And the reason why we're able to run this is that we had funding devoted to having a social impact explicitly, and that's what we were seeking in the projects. And the third thing is that both projects were possible strictly because we had the chance of having many completely different skills involved. So it was mathematical modeling and control theory, design, mechanical engineering, doctors, therapists, psychologists, and so on. And so on the one hand, the opportunity, and also the necessity of joining and putting these people together made this project possible. On the other hand, and that's the downside of this experience, is that this kind of work, since it is so interdisciplinary, in this kind of work, since it is interdisciplinary, it's hard to find the right venue for publication. And here I'm talking from my point of view of a researcher, it's much easier for me to publish results in a specific, that go deep in one domain, when there is a journal that has that title, than to publish these results which span a lot of domains, but don't exactly fit in any one specific. And so, of course, that's a problem if your career revolves around projects like this. Okay, that's not the only thing I do, luckily. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for your presentation. Are there questions or discussion points?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do we have a microphone, please, again? Sorry.
Your project is very fascinating. Thank you for presenting this to us. This is, I think the opportunity is it expands so many domains.
Yeah.
So of course I'm thinking for my adults, grip strength and all of these things that we try to measure in terms of frailty indices and these types of things as they age or pre-transplant or these types of things. But getting back to your very interesting finding of the improvement in, I think it was language fluency, or it was the complexity of the sentences, I don't know if you've talked with your colleagues, I don't have the expertise, but I'm just wondering very simply, is it a disinhibition that has allowed them to just, that language fluency? And if so, that's a huge finding for which you could promote this as as one would in reading, or all of the supports we put in schools for children that are having this type of thing. This is an additional sort of plus that you stumbled upon, I think.
I don't know if we can talk about improved fluency in the sense that that was a very short experiment. So in practice, those kids were playing for 12 minutes. So it was a very short-term effect. We have no idea what happens in the long term. But yes, we did observe more complex sentences. We don't know precisely what is the exact. So it was a surprise for us. We didn't exactly know what to expect. We were pleasantly surprised by what we observed. We are organizing actually a new follow-up to this experiment in the spring, where we will take fewer kids but let them play for a longer time and try to understand how that behavior evolves when they play for a longer, essentially for longer sessions or repeated sessions, to understand better what is happening, so what is triggering these changes and what is happening. Essentially, the answer is I don't know at the moment. This is just an observation right now. In order to build an understanding on top of this observation, we need to experiment more.
Steve?
Ali, it sounds like the climbing behavior, though, is quite a bit more complex than the previous behavior where they were just on the floor. I mean, could that have something to do with the complexity of sentences? In fact, that they had to use more complex language in order to describe what they were doing, because what they were doing was actually more complex? And even if so, I mean, I think that tells you that this kind of activity may be very useful in building language skills in kids like this.
It's possible. So our guess is that a more complex activity required more complex communication, essentially.
And they're faced away from each other, apparently.
And the fact of facing away. Yeah, so I can anticipate a few of the results from the other experiment, which we analyzed last week. So it's and I'm still waiting for the follow-up of next meeting with the students next week. So it's very partial. But in the other experiment, we would let them climb in both experiments. What we changed was that we went from climbing with very low tech, so a standard good old-fashioned climbing game with essentially the room, the interactive room turned off, to climbing with the technology working as we thought, a facilitator of communication. And what we learned is that introducing technology in the communication broke the communication. So we messed up the experiment, if you want. So we didn't have an objective. We wanted to observe what happened, so we didn't really mess it up. But the result, preliminary because it's in progress, but in under analysis, but the result appears to be that that the wrong use of the technology can actually reduce the communication if the kids find, essentially if the kids find a way of playing with the technology and not with a partner. Okay, that's the mistake we made in the second experiment. That's probably the mistake we made in the second experiment. In this experiment, the technology was not modifying essentially the necessity of playing with a partner. So the kids had, the game could not be played without the partner in both cases. And so in that case, the technology was not perturbing the things, and the more complex game, my understanding is, made so that the game required more effort in verbal communication. Yeah.
I think the presentation was beautiful.
Thank you.
Climbing is magnificent. Now it's a sport, but it's more than a sport. It's a way of life. It's full of history, tradition. They laugh because they know I climb. So, but it's really, it's almost a philosophy. So I think to use climbing, you know, because you climb too, to use climbing for this purpose, for young kids, almost as an educational method, will, you know, help them all their life. I mean, it's a very noble approach to help people with physical or mental problems, to approach it with this discipline, which is not easy. Actually, you all remember the phrase, why do you climb Everest?
Because it's there.
Because it's there. But it's not easy. It's not because it's easy that I climb it, but because it's there. So this is a noble attempt, I think, but the beauty of the sport, and especially outdoor, but when you climb indoor, then naturally you will climb outdoor for passion. It's really, it's not just interesting, but I think it's going to work a lot because of the movement, but the mental part of climbing. There's a big mental. I climb because of the total concentration, mind concentration when you climb. You cannot distract. You have to be 100% focused on one thing, and it's such a beautiful. And you said quite a few beautiful quotes, which I want to remind. When you said that kids look at Alex, the climber, and they started making a couple of moves and they feel that they are up there. That's a real feeling. It happens really, and we had the same when we saw my father climb when we were toddlers. We saw him climb, then we saw our mountain guide. We were not as good as them, but we wanted to, so we tried. We were inspired. And it happened, there's a boulder in New York City, in Central Park. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, in New York, there's no Dolomites. So all I have is a boulder, like 10-foot high rock. And I was doing some practicing and with another climber, and then a kid, maybe 10-year-old kid, came, looked at us for 10, 15 minutes, and we knew he was looking at us thinking these two guys are two stupid people doing nothing. So he looked. Then he asked me, he asked both of us, he said, what's the point? And the other climber just went, just hide. He hid. He said he didn't want to deal with the question. And I said, you know what's the point? The point is that there's no point. That's what it is. Then we finished, we walked away, we looked around, and this kid was climbing. So that's the example that he made, how this can help. But my question is, your experiments, are they done together with kids without particular disabilities or problems? Because I say to you, because maybe 15, 20 years ago, they started many sports here in Parma for impaired people, like basketball in wheelchair, volleyball, sitting volley, and they're doing really well in Parma. And they played with other kids, you know, kids that could walk were on wheelchairs playing, interacting with other kids, and volleyball as well. And this was a program that my mom was promoting, and now my sister, Benedetta, is carrying on. And I wonder if, in your case, using a group of kids can, you know, psychologically help
Probably.
both of them, I think, because climbing is it's not a team sport, but you
It's
have
a
to
social
be,
sport,
It's a
though.
social sport. You know, you meet people, but also you need each other. You need each other when you climb. It's a trust.
Where is it?
You need trust when you climb. So you have to give your full trust in another person.
I'm looking for a, yeah, here. No, sorry. Where is
Yes.
it? Social bonding through shared experiments, the role of emotional intensity. So that's the paper, but the common feeling of anybody who's been tied on a rope with another partner is that it creates a very a kind of bonding that you don't
Bond, yes.
easily reach in other contexts. So yes, definitely works for that. One of the beautiful outcomes of the first experiments of the One Accept was that two of the children involved in the experiment enrolled in climbing classes right away after the project. So they are still climbing on their own.
It gives you confidence.
Yeah.
So I'm glad. We're still designing with Dr. Jules Rudd, he's here. We designed a climbing wall some years ago at the YMCA Camp Olson. It's
Okay.
outdoor, but a climbing wall for starting the kids to the discipline. They have all the sports, but they didn't have this discipline, and I was pushing them to create one, and for the health benefits that they can get.
Yeah, so in these two experiments, so in the first one we involved children with CP. In the second one, essentially we organized with us, there were two schools involved. So we received whoever was a pupil at that school, and we had 300 children and 30 persons with people with mostly mild autism or different forms of cognitive disability, which is pretty much the standard percent of that kind of condition. I've been receiving frequently requests from rehabilitation centers to buy this technology to use it in the rehabilitation center. The problem at this moment is that the technology itself is at the moment not doing anything. So what is working at the moment is the climbing wall, and you can just, I don't need to buy it from me, just buy a regular climbing wall. The technology that we're putting around the climbing wall will work the moment we learn how to use that data to produce something informative for the child or for the therapist and so on. And at that point, I will have something to sell you if you want to buy it. But right now, I'm very convinced that this can be useful. This kind of experiences can be useful in helping people with cognitive or physical disabilities. But all you need to do if you want to use that is get a standard climbing wall or bring those people to a climbing gym and let them climb. So our contribution will maybe come later if we manage to validate any of those ideas in practice with the help of hospitals and clinical staff.
Okay, thank you very much. I think...
Thank you.
We should carry on. We are talking about music again, and music as therapy. Last night we had a beautiful musical concert organized by Philip Bonhoeffer and his friends, and so we are back to the We're not talking about music done by instruments, but by the human voice, by singing. So I'm looking forward to the next talk.
Into USB-C, or if you want, if you have HDMI.
I think this is, I'm hopeful this is going to work.
It's working.
Oh,
Yeah,
good.
perfect.
Perfect.
Okay, so we can start. Pierluigi Festa will talk about singing as respiratory therapy. So sounds a very interesting talk.
Cross.
Yeah, I think you have to. Maybe, are you in PowerPoint?
Ma io non vedo l'iscritto, poi qualcosa mi deve aiutare. Sì, un po' di aiuto, un po' di aiuto per alcune cose che non ricordo.
Oh, it's in YouTube?
No, it's not. We need to get out of here. And,
Just do a view presenter mode.
yeah.
Should work.
where is that? It's
think
in
it's,
Visualiza. And we don't want presenter mode.
He might need his notes though, right?
It says normal.
Which one is view? Disegna? No.
No, Visualiza.
Oh, Visualizza. What does it?
Good. Can I start? It's okay. So I don't see Umberto. I would like a very big thanks to Umberto, to all the organized committee, Steve, Philip, also Anna, the Umberto's wife, and Roberto Williams. Really, I'm very, very happy to be here with so many friends. I will talk about Fontan. The first part, I just will mention some Fontan detail that, of course, many of you knows very good, very good. But at the end, I will discuss some, let's say, unconventional way to treat Fontan. That maybe has been already talked in the section, in the beautiful section this morning. Fontan palliation consists in the creation of an unconventional hemodynamics aimed to restoring the physiologic separation of two circulation in children born with congenital heart disease, which in the pump cannot serve as the two circulation. The brave experiment, let's say the brave, because it was really unbelievable what he thought, was conceived and carried by Dr. Fontaine in the 70s in Bordeaux. I'm sure that it was, today, it was impossible to carry on this type of experiment because the ethics, something like that. The experiment consists in using the malformed ventricle, referred as functionally single ventricle, to handle the high systemic pressure and leave the pulmonary circulation without any pump. Pulmonary circulation with low pressure without any pump. However, the non-physiological pulmonary circulation, lacking its natural pump, results in a necessary increased central venous pressure. You see? Because the only way to ensure the blood to continue to flow through the pulmonary circulation without a pump. Therefore, on the one hand, we had nowadays, currently, 30 years survive in at least 80% of Fontan patients. But at the same time, we have to admit that we have 100% of Fontan-related disease. There's no way. Why these kids, these people are sick? For number one, because there is a reduced capacity to increase the cardiac output, and the reason is why, because there is no any pulmonary pump. But the second reason is much more important, is because the chronic increase of venous pressure leads to a necessary multi-organ disease. All the apparatus are involved. Digestive apparatus with a different degree of disease up to the enteropathy, protein-losing enteropathy. The reproductive system with a certain percentage of sterile women. Pulmonary vascular disease, of course, because a non-pulsated flow and restricted lung disease, up to plastic bronchitis due to the malformed lymphatic drainage, but also endocrinopathy, neurocognitive changes, and so on. But due to the unique venous circulation, every Fontan patient leads to the so-called Fontan-associated liver disease. It's very interesting because it's a disease that we didn't know before. It's not written on the book. And the problem is that there are many issues still unresolved about the degree of this, how to judge the degree of this disease and what is its progression. We still don't know its progression. So, for this reason, there have been, since its attempt in the 70s, many changes have been proposed to reduce the dispersion of energy in the conduit. And today, the most validated technique is the so-called extracardiac Fontan that uses an extracardiac conduit. And more recently, many bioengineering studies are underway with the help of 4D MRI flow to further reduce the energy dispersion in the Fontan circuit. Very interesting. But another approach must be, it's to enhance the efficiency of Fontan circulation, focusing on the energy sources that drive blood into the pulmonary circulation despite the absence of the pump and valves. These are the driving force of the systemic circulation. Never forget that the two circulation are in series. The muscle pump exerted by the muscle, especially for the lower limbs. And finally, the intrathoracic negative pressures exerted during deep breathing. So the question is, which is the best therapy that can have an impact on all these issues? The answer is very easy. Exercise and physical activity. This is the answer. No way. All three issues are, can be solved ameliorated by exercise. Therefore, as I already highlighted in these two papers, our therapy, I stress the term therapy for child since the age 7, 8 years, maybe also before 6 years, is to carry out physical activity and sports, physical activity and sport activity. It's a therapy. And we are in Italy. Unfortunately, in Italy, this is not allowed because sport activity is regulated, what we said before, is regulated by Sport Medicine Federation, with in fact prevent our young heart patients from participation in sport activities that they generally prefer. Okay, climbing, but they prefer soccer and basketball. This creates not only a physical impairment to that patient, our patient, but also a really concrete psychological damage. We have to know that. So, to overcome this limitation, we involved the free diving master who applied the pranayama technique for training the lung. Pranayama means control of prana. A prana is characterized by conscious, slow, and deep acts of breathing based on diaphragmatic contraction and relaxation. So we offered our patient 2 weekly sessions to 10 Fontan patients. One at our hospital with a monitor, and you will see in the slides. And we have a very nice hospital with garden to look into the sea, some of you. And another session at home for 3 months. And the result was quite good result on the cardiorespiratory performance. This is before the cardiorespiratory the respiratory training. This is after. In these cardiorespiratory performance indexes, of course, small patients, not. But, however, due to poor compliance of our young patients, it was difficult to convince them to keep on exercise at home, and therefore soon they lost the result obtained. So, one evening, chatting with Philip by the fireplace in Monte Castelli, we came up with an idea to address the low compliance among young patients. Why not to try to train lungs by singing? So the project Cantando was born. As a first step, physiologists and physicians from Monasterio Aro Hospital and CNR involved in the respiratory treatment of such children met with the choir master of the Maggio Musicale Fiorentino. And it became clear that the breathing exercise for engaged singing were overlapping with the exercise of therapeutic session for patients with heart disease, were quite the same. So, what's the study design? 8 children with Fontan circulation between 7 and 14 years, because the choir was Voci Bianche, so it must be participated in a 3-month choral singing program with 1 session per week, And once a month, they join healthy children in the Florence Maggio Fiorentino. Before and after the course, they performed the clinical and the spiritual function. And at the end also was done a satisfaction questionnaire. At the end of the course, there was a final concert for both the healthy children and the choir of the Maggio Fiorentino. This is one of the sessions in our hospital. There is no music, the volume, maybe. Okay, it's not for the other one. Maybe. We hear. Okay, yeah, okay. Okay, this is the most important. And this is the final concert in Monte Castelli that some of you. Yes. No, doesn't. Okay, doesn't. Okay. Doesn't matter. This just was. Volete sentirla? Ho sentito.
Hit escape. And, okay,
Poi si sente. Ok.
There we go. Yeah, try it again. Now, you have to be out of the slideshow to be able to see it, to hear it. Can we, let's go out of there again.
Because non si vede là.
I don't know why it won't do it.
Okay, we can just add and then.
Yeah.
It was fun to see them join. Okay. This is the concert in final concert in Monte Castelli. We joined the two groups: the healthy children with the healthy children with the congenital heart disease, and at the end the control was the diaphragmatic examination of the lung. It was quite difficult because there was young, two child, and also the number are quite few. But we saw some good result on the diaphragmatic contraction. But what was much more interesting was the question after the concert, after all the course, and you can see that on the three planes of relational, social, emotional, and physical, the degree of satisfaction, even physical, was very good. So we come back to the issue discussed this morning. It's clear now today, this morning has been very, very well highlighted, that there is a tight interconnection because the psychological state, the quality of life, and also the physical state. So Fontan, we know as they are systemic chronic disease that lead to a lifelong follow-up with a multi-organ morbidity and a life expectancy that is certainly below average. So the psychological aspect is essential. It's really essential in this kind of these kids and also adults, for enhancing quality of life, and may the psychological aspect, I think, can even have some positive impact on the physical health and also, I think, life expectancy. No way. So, for conclusion, this is, I think, a very useful list where several early life experience for Fontan patients that may contribute to the mental health outcomes across their lifespan. And all of them, some of them have been discussed this morning. Some of them are very, very remarkable. Let's read together the first one. They have limited opportunity for attuned and developmentally sensitive interaction with caregivers. What does it mean for us? It means that we have to talk with them. We have to listen their voices. There are many things to tell us, and we have to listen to them. We have to lose time to give our time to them. They are exposed to fighting in painful or invasive clinical intervention. What does it say to us? If we deeply understand this, then we have to recognize the risk of the overtreatment that surely exists in our clinic, because you have to know the consequence of the overtreatment. High level of parental stress and distress, including grief and traumatic stress. What does it mean? That we have to take care also the family. This morning has been been highlighted. We have to educate family to live with their child's illness, to avoid overstanding the risk. It's very easy for us to highlight the risk of the child, but this is not wrong, but not right. We have avoid to overstand the risk to the family, because this put the family at high stress that is transmitted, of course, to the patient. So what does that mean? Means that we have to practice less defensive medicine, because we give stress to the family because to protect us sometimes. And at the end, the last, at last but not least, loneliness and limited opportunity for social engagement with peers. So what does it mean? We have to push them to engage in sport activity and allow them to compare themselves with the peers. That's why we are committed to organize group events with our Fontan patients. This is again another concert in Monte Castelli. Then I will listen. And this is a football game. I was there, playing with the Fontan patients. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Are there questions, comments? Oh yeah, okay. Yes, please. Can you get the microphone too?
What were you measuring in one of the first data slides that you showed on respiratory effects? It was early on. I couldn't tell what it was you were measuring.
In adults, this was in adult, the first one. The first experience with
It was before.
Yeah, the first experience was with adults.
Yeah, this. What I couldn't read it. What's the...
Yeah, no, it was on bicycle. On bicycle, endurance time. It was endurance time, yeah. It was with the help of some pneumologists. We had very, very good results.
Gigi, I want to ask you another question. Compliments for showing us this kind of physical activity that helps very much. I agree with you. But this is not finished, the story, because the end of the story is another one. That means we need, in the future, maybe heart transplant in these patients. So singing is very good, but in the future we need maybe, for many of them, heart transplant operation. Don't you agree?
No, I agree very well. I know that these are very complex patients, that they need very complex structure with very high level intervention, interventionalists, surgeons. I don't say to let, I say, but beside all our treatment, very important treatment, we have to educate them to do their life, to try to more exercise. We have to accept that exercise is a therapy. And if we can pass this concept, maybe we can overcome some of Italian limitations that are very, very bad. I'm fighting a very, very strong battle in Italy because I can't prove that the limitation we have in Italy are not only are very, damage for also on the educational plane. So I don't want to bore you, and also maybe it's difficult for me. In Italy, every year, a healthy children has to pass AKG. Every year, healthy children. So, what is the message that we send to the family that he needs an AKG to go to sport since 8-9 years? What is the message? What is the message? It is a very anti-educative. What is the message that we give to family, normal family? Then one time in years they listen this death of one child in the football field because of mass media. They have to do every year an EKG. This is a very bad message. So now we have to fight to give this patient as therapy, a physical exercise, with some risk. But when we give beta blockers, when we give medicine to our patient, there is a risk as well. There is a risk. There's no way. And we don't need certification to give beta blocker to our patient. So in our world, in Italy, we live with certification. But I think it's uneducational. We have to learn to accept let's say, the fatality. Doesn't exist the certainty of the non so come dire, delle procedure. When they sign the, come si dice, il consenso, it's an hypocrisy. It's big hypocrisy, il consenso per la procedura che nessuno legge, però c'è il consenso. Il certificato per fare it's because people want certainty, and this is a typical hypocrisy.
Are you following up on the program with singing? Because I think you should probably get more long-term results, and because the preliminary results looked very, very promising, I think, with the singing.
Yeah.
But you should really try to have a more long-term study, of course, and then you can enroll more children, and I think then you can enroll more children, and then the success is going to be much bigger. You know, if you should train them longer, and you should enroll more children. Well, these preliminary results, they warrant that it's not just an experiment, it's a real therapy, I think. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, okay, you are continuing, okay. I think there were other questions, sorry?
Oh, absolutely. No, thank you. Thank you for that. I love this opportunity, not only because, so you said it, we're so uncomfortable with uncertainty. And I think this is a really wonderful way to address that, because we're giving them something, physical activity they can control regardless of these rules, regardless of what country we're in. They can sing. We're giving them a social purpose, social connectedness, which we know helps physical and mental health as well. And then we're also giving them the opportunity to feel more empowered in participating in their own health. So I love this, absolutely. And I think you were maybe asking this, are there opportunities to partner with other locations, other institutions, other countries to expand work like this? Because I think there'd be great interest in doing this on a larger scale.
Sure.
Okay, Philip?
Thank you. So I was involved in that study, and I just wanted to kind of make a few comments about kind of the practicality and difficulties of it. Because I'm completely convinced, being a musician myself, that playing music is something which one eventually enjoys, and one will not perceive as exercise. Every violinist or every whatever deals with the fact that they get back pain and all kinds of discomforts and whatnot, and they'll still insist with their music. So it's, you overcome, I mean, the fact that you have to practice, the fact that you have to whatever, is paid back by the joy of music for those who love it, and I think most people who become competent will eventually love it. So I think the one very, very important part in this is the motivational thing, because I mean, it's boring to do respiratory exercise, and it's not boring to sing. And in fact, in this case, we had feedback from the parents that their children continue to sing. So they just do it at home, they continue to sing their tunes and whatnot. I think the problems we had or in this study is very much, for example, a geographical problem. The congenital heart disease isn't terribly common. Fontan populations are, I mean, Fontan kids are living far apart by, I mean, in areas which are not very densely populated. Tuscany is one of those areas, so the kids are far from each other, and it's relatively difficult to get them together because, I mean, to put the burden on these families to drive them for, I don't know how many hours, if you count back and forth every week, is just sometimes not manageable if there are other kids also in the family and so on. So we were struggling with exactly that problem. And also maybe that we were dealing with the opera in Florence, the Maggio Fiorentino, and they have a children's choir, and since, I mean, there it has to be children, so we couldn't actually put it to adolescents. I mean, it was just because of their policy. So the kids with, I mean, boys with deep voice would have been excluded already, and so there are many practical little problems, but the way we tried to overcome that was to look at whether in other pediatric subspecialties there wouldn't be an equal kind of interest, even though maybe scientifically positioned slightly differently. So we were thinking at involving neurological, I mean, problems with neurological development in some kids and so on, but then there are psychological issues. I mean, do you really want to tell a heart child that they also have to be together with kids in their free time who have other nature of problems? Maybe that would kind of, you know, have an effect on their self-esteem and so on. I mean, so there would be all kinds of little problems. But what you said is absolutely true. I mean, so we have started to get interest from some people. In particular, we had interest from Germany, from the two German heart centers in Berlin and Munich, who eventually would also like to engage into that. Then fundamental research with the Max Planck Institutes in Germany have been kind of, or are in the phase of development. We are going to meet actually next week. Then there was, for example, the Necker Hospital in Paris, which also wanted to engage into that. I think it's still not very mature. The one problem we really have is you need a choir. You can't actually, I mean, you know, yeah, you need the kind of critical amount of kids, and we have struggled a little bit with the with the financing of the choir. Because once the choir exists, I think it has a million spin-off opportunities to answer kind of research questions, but if you don't have the choir, you can't actually start. And I think this is the point we are struggling with right now, and we hope that we can kind of overcome it. But I think, I mean, just like the climbing, like other sports activities, the one thing is you don't need a permission to do that. You will get the motivation. And I mean, it was so evident. I mean, the kids, when they were in Monte Castelli, the place where I run this science and music project, I mean, the families were beaming. I mean, because the kids had this satisfaction of performing, standing on something, you know, I mean, with people who listened and who clapped. I mean, they're not used to that. I mean, the kind of cardiac kid is protected in the kind of personal environment and doesn't get the opportunity to perform. They don't have the little sports event which other kind of children have in their normal development. So what you're saying is absolutely true. I think Gigi or myself or whatever would be very interested in having other people also try to engage in this experience, and I would think it's, yeah, I believe very strongly in it. Thank you.
Yeah, right. Thanks very much. I think we have another break now. I thank every presenter of this session. Oh, you want to say sorry? Yeah, sorry.
I want to say in New Jersey, where I live, they are doing something similar just for music, but every school in New Jersey has like selects a choir, and my daughter Amelia is in the choir, and then once a year, maybe more, they gather all together at they gather in last time was at Liberty, well, in an arena, very big, the basketball arena, and they did a huge choir during a concert. There was a concert by a rock band, and they filled half of the stadium, half of the arena, 5,000 kids, all with different shirts, identifying the schools, and so maybe getting, many schools or groups together. That was amazing to watch the 5,000 kids all lit up, singing. But that's a power of music. That's a power of, and I think a couple of things. I think the psychological aspect of all these approaches to illnesses is extremely important, because if it's done wrong, it worsens the person. I'm talking old asylum, but now these things really give the strength to an ill person to feel he is his own doctor, not going under the tools, but acting. And as an example, I want to remind you, most of you have known Sara Monferdini, Bruno's daughter, who left us 3-4 years ago, and she was an example of how psychologically working around her, making her become like a teacher for preschool. She became really, she improved so much. And the family, the stress on the family that you were mentioning was basically shown in the painting that Beth showed us. You see this, the look of the mother, very different from the father. The father was like a stone, and the mother knew already what was coming. So that was psychological impact, but also how difficult it has to be for parents, and how important your work is towards them as well. So I think also Rastelli approached his career, his work on what you said, the charity towards the patient, not just scientifically has to be perfect, but also a human approach. He devoted himself to the personal and moral and psychological effect and good effect to patients. So if we already said that climbing works for children, for everyone, and there was a great intuition of Alessandro to bring it and make it, useful for even people who need it more. And music, we know, we heard yesterday, last night, everybody was astonished of how perfection doesn't exist, but that was almost the threshold. Under perfection, how can it help? How beautiful can it be? And sports also, but sports, you have to remember, mens sana in corpore sano. A healthy mind in a healthy body. The Romans used to say that. So sports is very effective for mental illnesses too. And the last thing I want to say, thanking you for letting me, the outsider, to say a few words and stay here with you, is that with art, what Beth showed us, that's another example of how beauty is inside the world, inside of us, inside every aspect, if we can find it. And so maybe it was right to say, who said it, that beauty will save the world. And that's what I wanted to say. Now you end the session.
Huh? Okay, yeah, I think these were excellent words to end the session. I think we have another break now, and then we have another session at 16:30. 4:30, yeah, 4:30. Yeah, okay, sure, yeah. 16:30, yeah, 4:30.
Then I wanted to speak to him, Steve, I'm gonna go, okay? And if you wanna join, but otherwise I'll tell him that we have a little arrangement. Yeah. What you have to transfer? The what? I just Stanley. Yes. Okay. No worries.
Mi dispiace che eravate riusciti a far andare l'audio e il video.
No, cioè, anche se ho cambiato qua, altoparlanti, poi c'era interni, però ho cambiato ma rimane sempre...
Diceva forse di toglierlo dalla presentazione.
Ma era bello vedere il video insieme al...
No, ma tutto il video, di toglierlo, di spostare il video da qualche altra parte, cioè non è su YouTube, non è da nessuna, non ce l'avete caricato in live. e di spostare magari il video
Ho
qui, che
capito.
magari togliendolo copiandolo in quella, forse non lo so.
Perché non, cioè, non è mio il computer, quindi non ho idea dei miei processi. Ah, perché là il monitor. Come faccio a spostare?
Perché quello lì, secondo me, forse
No, no, è questo, è questo.
Eccoci qua, questo qua. Adesso ah, perché è staccato questo?
Sì, perché se no non riuscivo a controllare. Non so dove ce l'ha questo video.
Ma questo proprio sto facendo copia questa cosa qui, questa cosa qua.
Ok, proviamo. Quindi così proprio.
Sì, proprio così brutalmente.
Su Word, tipo.
No, no, proprio anche qui lo metto.
Qua secondo me non ce lo fa.
Non lo prende.
No.
Cioè facendo incolla non,
No.
non ho preso
No,
neanche.
dovrebbe essere proprio il file, ma non so cosa.
No, però poi alla fine non cambia più di tanto.
Papà? Papà? Dove ce l'hai il video di Monte Castelli? No, 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 cioè non ce l'hai un file che si può...
È nella carta.
Ce l'hai sul drive?
Sul drive, sì, questo.
Ah, aspetta che ti do l'hotspot.
No, ma se sta qua,
Sì, con questo cavetto adesso stanno facendo delle prove per un'altra cosa, però...
se l'abbiamo, non sta sul drive, che se l'abbiamo qua.
E dove le trovi?
Ah, forse per questo non ha suonato.
Ma se non spostiamo come normale, non ce l'hai tu qua.
Che ne so, questo fa tutto l'anno.
Guarda, tu non devi mai chiedere ma cioè non lo sa, non gliel'hai spiegato bene. Tu devi chiamare Lamia. Papà, non devi disturbare, papà.
Su questa cosa del cantando lei ci ha fatto la testa.
Tu papà non lo devi disturbare.
Deve caricare su quel computer lì? No.
No, voglio dire voi la presentazione.
Io non avete bisogno.
Lo provo dopo, così
La
andiamo
cucina
avanti.
sono spaziale.
Ma scusa, avete anche, quindi il Lechero chi è che vi ha detto voglio partecipare? Filippo ha detto abbiamo avuto interesse dalla Germania, vabbè, e dal Lechero.
Come si chiama? Sì, il Bonnet e quell'altro là, perché come si chiama? È il chirurgo.
Ma chi, Olivia Caschi?
No, il chirurgo amico di Uè.
Ah, Pascal.
E Bonnet sempre d'accordo, dai,
Sì, vabbè.
infatti ha detto Filippo ti fida. Infatti l'ho detto, guarda, ti fida.
Pascal ti vuoi fare? Sì, no, è di estendere.
Cosa fai la passi adesso?
No, ce l'ho possibile.
Tu di estendere, bisogna fare tutti i bambini. No, però davvero questa cosa è importante. Il discorso di insegnamento, dice, mi interessa tanto, quindi veramente sentiamoci, cioè nel senso che...
metti il tuo computer
Sì.
allora.
Aspetta. Autonoma. Però, moderatori, mi dovete... La parola è la vostra, mica la mia, che mi automodulo. Posso fare tutto io. Allora.
Ti presenti da solo.
Yes, it works. Okay, let's please everyone find a seat and let's get started.
Effettivamente lo devo fare uno gender comment.
Okay, Claudio. Claudio and I are supposed to be the chairpersons for this session, but of course, we have left it entirely up to our panel here to decide who and what and when. So we're going to just get out of the way and let our young physicians tell us a few things, which we are anxious to learn.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Congratulations for the composition of the panel, and we are definitely curious to hear what the suggestions are for the future of pediatric cardiology, the upcoming AI, the social aspects, as we heard all the day. So let's start. Bertrand was hereby, but I don't see him. He ran away, maybe. Too many doctors, and so he's scared. He's scared. Can we start, Steve? Okay. So who is the first? Francesca? We will start with Francesca Raimondi from presently Bergamo. She walked a lot in the last few years.
Thank you very much. So, yeah, exactly. We are a female panel. So I did not realize before. So it's one of future elements of medicine, I think, in the difference of gender. Bertrand is here, so we are not a female panel anymore.
Clap your hands, folks.
So first of all, I am really, really happy and honored and proud to be here. Actually, this year it's my 20 years from when I met Professor Sanders in 2004. So it's a big anniversary for me. It's the reason why I'm a pediatric cardiologist, actually. So really thanks to Steve that accompanied me in all my professional and also personal life and in all difficult moments to take big decisions. So thank you very much, Steve. And I'm really happy to introduce this discussion about the future of this meeting and what this meeting means. And I will bring a little bit of my experience, what it meant for me in my professional life when I was young. So I'm really happy to be in a young panel, but I'm not young anymore. And so to propose what I think we should do in the future. My first slides will be really, really rapid because actually during the day, we already spoke about the majority of things that I was going to say. So the future is growing up. I mean that actually the scenario, since when I start pediatric cardiology 20 years ago, it's really different now. So we have to move on in a different, totally different, world of congenital cardiology. So first of all, it's not pediatric cardiology anymore, it's a real congenital cardiology. And the title of this meeting is always being from fetus to adulthood, and it reflects exactly how pediatric cardiology changed in these 20 years. Pediatric numbers did not change at all, while adults with congenital heart disease changed a lot, and they are increasingly, amazingly in this year. And this is why our surgeons were absolutely amazing in this year. So we are in a different era from 80s and 90s, because surgery was so brilliant that now we are capable actually to palliate or operate every cardiopathy. So we are not in the same kind of progresses in this field. We don't need a lot for the moment, because the majority of children were perfectly operated, and now they are growing up. This is not a problem, but this is the new reality we are facing too. And so I just put about Fontan, because I would just to say, as I'm director in Bergamo, that the first Fontan operation in Italy was done in Bergamo in 1974. So just to continue the Fontan experience. And so, for example, in my unit now, we have a huge population of Fontan people, of really, really old population. And you already saw in this morning, we are transferring the morbidity and mortality. This is the curve in Europe we already saw in the morning. So actually our population, even in pediatric cardiology, we have to worry about the thing that our population is becoming another kind of population. So we have to prevent what they are going to be in the future. And it is a really interesting data that the 45% of mortality in our children when they are going to be adult is not cardiovascular. So it means that there are a lot of other diseases associated with this population that we have to face too. And we already spoke brilliantly this morning, this afternoon, about all the aspects of neurodevelopment, social interaction, and another invisible, actually, illness that our population have. And this is part of our job. This is part of our interaction with patients. It's also about empathy, so human interaction with patients in every sense, because we have, if we operated them and we saved their life, we have to take care about them all their life, because it does not make sense to repair a children or univentricular heart and then actually let him in the world. We have to accompany, because our goal is to give to these children, to this child, the quality of life. So operating was the first step, of course, so we thought about it in the last 30 years, but now that we are able to operate them, we have to face other things, because, okay, they are safe in terms of heart anatomy, but they are not safe for other things. So one aspect really important is brain and heart, that even in fetal life, we are starting to know now all the neurological impact of fetal cardiopathy during fetal life in utero, and we are starting now to study the impact of this cardiopathy in fetal life. So the growing up process is a really complex process. We are really, really keen now to all aspects, technological, surgical, to heart transplantation, artificial heart. But we have to take care about the new heart team, so our new challenges, our new needs. And so the heart team is not composed anymore only by cardiologists, surgeon, and intensive care unit, but it's a really complex and multidisciplinary team that we need now. So for me, the future of Parma meeting, and I will open the discussion for my colleague, is first of all to broaden the focuses on different aspects of our congenital patients, because they are really complex and we have to take care about a lot of other problems that they have, because it's a part of the same goal to give to the child a beautiful life. And first of all, not forget actually what we learned until now. So we have to transmit and to teach to students and fellows. So in my opinion, this meeting should be advertised to university, to fellows, to students, to medical students, and to fellows, not to expert cardiologists, because we need to really transmit our knowledge, because we are losing a lot of knowledge. Sorry to say that, but the new generation of pediatric cardiologists are really ignorant about a lot of aspects that I learned that were part of my training, like embryology, anatomy, pathological aspects of pieces, art pieces. They don't study at all this kind of thing. So we don't have to forget, of course, what we learned. We have to transmit. And so we have to advertise to this kind of category. Another thing that for me was really important here when I was young is to create a network, because I was really, I had 28, 30 years old, and here I met a lot of top and high-level people over the world, and I created my network. I knew here Laurent Fermont was the reason why I moved to France and to Paris, and I made my marvelous experience in France, for example. So it's really a special occasion to create a network, also for people that work in really small centers, because we have to share our knowledge, to communicate, and to create networks between centers to progress. And so, of course, to be inspiring and support for new ideas. Thank you very much.
Can I say something before Ilaria actually gives her presentation? Just to give a bit of background, this is supposed to be a round table. So we had a mini round table before the meeting, a really mini, so that we try to coordinate the messages we wanted to pass on, but mostly to simulate the conversation. And I think we have moderators here whose tasks are also to take minutes of this round table and write down all the ideas that are coming out, because I think it would be important to have a record of this. So the way we are going to introduce the talks will be a little bit from introduction and fetus, pediatric and adults, and then broadening from teaching and so on.
So we're just sorting out some technicalities here. If there are no questions, my name is Ilaria Bo, and I'm a pediatric cardiologist and fetal cardiologist. I work in London. And thank you for inviting me today.
We might all have the same problems with the connection.
Just in case, I'll keep this ready. Just in case, and I just...
Well, I can use the Mac.
Let me just grab my USB. I know, sorry about the Mac. There it is, okay.
So it goes with the Mac and it doesn't with Windows?
I don't know what is going on, I'm not sure.
Okay, so I guess I'll carry on just because I don't have any slides. So I'll save the day. Okay. Yeah, we were supposed to follow a different order. I was supposed to kind of close the session because I'm the only non-pediatric cardiologist or cardiologist on the panel, I think. I'm a pediatrician and I work in the emergency department, and I have a specific interest in global health. Okay, no, you're in? Okay. So I'll just shift the perspective for a second. So we've talked all day about quality of life for patients with incredibly interesting presentations. So I'll shift the focus and I'll talk about, or at least ask a few questions about what is the quality of life for young physicians, right? So last year I gave a talk on burnout, physician burnout, and looking at rates of dissatisfaction between young colleagues, which are incredibly high. It's a very challenging time in healthcare. Things are rapidly evolving, and at least I can definitely speak from the Italian perspective. Currently, we're probably at our lowest point with the national health system. We're facing a lot of challenges, and so we know that young physicians are lacking motivation. They are leaving the country mostly. There is a real brain drain problem. They're leaving the profession, or in the best case scenario, they're actually not working in hospitals. So we have a real problem with underserved areas. So my question is, they're obviously struggling. So how can we help them? How can we help our trainees? And how can we keep them engaged and help them find meaning? So, and I would love to hear, what everyone's thoughts are on the matter, because I feel like this is probably not only an Italian problem, it's a widespread problem. And so just thinking about keeping them engaged, I think we were going to talk about training. I think that's definitely, one of the key points. So, making young trainees and residents and fellows feel like, we care for them, we care about their education, giving them the tools that they need to become experienced physicians. And this is where the future looks at, obviously, artificial intelligence and virtual reality and simulation, and all of these are incredibly helpful. And I think that in Italy, mostly there are some gaps where we could definitely improve our training system and, help our residents become more independent. Whereas in terms of finding motivation, I think that, for training, we need to look forward. In terms of finding motivation, I feel like we need to look backwards a little bit and go back to the basics, and help our trainees and residents kind of reconnect with what the real meaning of being a physician is, and focus on healing and what that means. And so basically, on this side of things, I feel like global health could actually be a great opportunity. So we've talked about how arts can help our trainees find compassion and empathy and curiosity, and I think that similarly in global health, there's a lot of opportunities. So global health can broaden your perspectives. It shows you different ways of practicing medicine. It gives you, the opportunity firsthand to really change patients' lives and actually, have a huge impact in a very small amount of time. And I think that creates a great gratification, which on the long term actually helps find meaning, in the profession. So just talking about this, I feel like global health is an area, again, of great opportunity. I have just recently come back from a mission in Liberia, which has been established about 11 years ago by the Global Health Department at Boston Children's, where they basically set up and have been helping trainees in pediatrics. And so I feel like these pediatricians have grown to be, the leading class of physicians in the country. It's an incredibly has the lowest GDP, is one of the countries that has the lowest GDP in the world. And so they've created a class of leaders which have decided to stay in the country and try to help shape the future of their country. So at the same time, residents and trainees that have gone to Liberia throughout the years have definitely come back enriched by this experience. So in general, global health is a two-way relationship. I feel like it's a win-win situation, and I really feel like it should be implemented in trainees' core curriculums to help enrich their experiences. And looking forward at this meeting, I came to know this meeting, and I've been coming to these meetings. Again, I'm not a pediatric cardiologist, so I've been interested in the global health aspect of these meetings, and I've really found it enriching. And so looking forward, I really hope that global health will be a part of these meetings, which can help trainees and people from different backgrounds and with different specialties embrace this project. Thank you.
So good afternoon, and again, I'm Ilaria, and I am a fetal cardiologist. So I want to reflect on 3 points that I think are relevant and where I hope to see some progresses and innovation. And one of these is the issue around detection of congenital heart diseases, and the second point is multimodal approach to congenital heart disease in utero, and finally, the field of fetal interventions. And starting from prenatal detection of congenital heart disease, we know, and this will be also discussed further by my colleague, it is a key point in detection of congenital heart abnormalities, and this is what first can change and improve survival and allow optimal management. And still, nowadays, despite all the improvement that we had by modification and implementation of obstetric screening programs, it is still very heterogeneous and highly operator dependent. And whilst in some region worldwide is quite satisfactory, it is still quite deficient in others. And that's where I think the first part of the work needs to be done by really increasing our communication, networking with a local team obstetrician, training our sonographers, being available for them. And that's where possibly in the future, and what I hope in the next decade or so, the role of artificial intelligence may be seen, may be relevant, not as a replacement of the professional, but rather integrating the machine learning models and human expertise, act as a second reviewer and standardize the screening, and this could include hopefully and potentially also low and middle income countries. So the role of our AI, mainly in the screening part to detect and to suspect congenital heart abnormalities. The second point I want to make is the multimodal approach, multimodal imaging for congenital heart diseases. And there is a misconception among many that fetal cardiology is only and merely a diagnostic ultrasound service, which is not the case. Many conditions would benefit from multimodal approach. We have the luxury in some centers to have availability of fetal cardiac MRI, but also the importance of the integration with fetal brain MRI, fetal total body MRI, especially in certain conditions such as hypoplastic left heart, where there are concerns about restriction at interatrial level and so on. And the growing role of maternal hyperoxygenation test in assessing pulmonary vascular reactivity in the fetus, all this needs to be now taken into account, considered, especially for those conditions in which patient may be at increased risk of requiring emergency postnatal intervention. So patient selection, counseling, prognostication, and this is why I think a multimodal approach is crucial. And the last point that I want to make is around fetal cardiac intervention. And this is not only what is well known nowadays, transcatheter intervention. There are very well-developed programs in certain centers that have been treating and approaching certain conditions such as critical aortic stenosis, pulmonary stenosis, and more recently stenting and dilatation of the interatrial septum in certain groups of patients, but also pharmacological intervention. And apart from the very well-known medical treatment of fetal arrhythmia in utero, we are now targeting the arterial duct in certain selected cases of severe fetal Epstein, where circular shunt has been established. We know that this can constrict the duct and potentially improve the systemic perfusion, the cerebral perfusion, decrease mortality of this very sick patient in utero. There has been cases of large and hemodynamically significant rhabdomyoma treated with mTOR inhibitors in utero with some positive outcome. There are cases of Pompe disease that started to receive enzyme replacement therapy in utero, and also the growing interest around the therapeutic use of maternal hyperoxygenation in left heart hypoplasia with an aim and with a hope to promote left heart hypoplasia. So these are my reflection about the future. These are my hope and wishes, and yes, and I'm open to discussion. Thank you.
It's not that easy. My name is Catherine Bakkeria, and I also want to continue what Ilaria just said. Can you help me, please? Okay, thank you very much. First of all, I want to thank you one more time, Professor Skvarcha, to be here, and in behalf of my father also, I want to say that this meeting is always great, and there is a lot of information that we can have from this meeting, but it's open. Yeah, thank you. I also fetal, neonatal, and pediatric cardiologist, so what I want to add to Ilaria's words, I think that genetic is a big part of pediatric cardiology right now, and it should be, because we all know there are a lot of syndromes, yeah. But instead of this knowing, sometimes we didn't do this examination, even in fetus, and it's not good because we have to think about mental disorders. We have to think about some diseases in future. Also, it can help us to treat children after birth, because, for example, when we have fetal arrhythmia, for example, ventricular tachycardia, we can find long QT syndrome, and all of you know that there is a different approach if we have long QT syndrome or if it's just a ventricular tachycardia. And to treat these children is in the right way is a very important point if we have a genetic knowledge. Next part is artificial intelligence. This topic was already discussed, but what we done, and this work till now continue in Russia, we learn machine, so we learn program to find abnormality in fetal heart. So it helps and it will help people who work outside specialized centers, so outside big cities, to find abnormality. And this is very important because we know that at the second screening, we have to find congenital heart defect or some pathology. And if this doctor isn't an expert, so he can miss this diagnosis. That's why we strongly believe that this thing will help people to find abnormality and send patient to the cardiac center, for example, or to Ilaria as example. And and the detection precision was not that bad. It was around 82-88%. And we hope to learn this machine further and to check pathology. And in the future, I hope that we will help people to learn some technique, and it's a part of education, I can say, in the future. But the most thing that I want to focus in is psychology. And I strongly believe that it's a big part of our future, because right now we have a lot of experience in medical care, in surgery, in pediatric cardiology, but these children are right now adults. They want to have a family, they want to have a sport activity, as was said, they want to live a normal life. But their life starts from the diagnosis. And the parents who have this, we can say, bad experience, I can even can't imagine how the woman wait for a child, and she knows that this child should be operated in, I don't know, in 1 week after birth. It's a tragedy for family. That's why psychologist has to be not the only part. He has to come, or she has to come to this family, to these parents, just after the diagnosis. And we found a foundation. So it's a charity organization, 3 hearts. So heart for a child, from a doctor, and from a parents. And we do a lot of work. So we organize every year Children's Heart Day. We do some schools for parents, for future parents. Also, we make an education. We go to the hospital and we educate medical staff how they have to talk to these parents, to this family, because it's very important to do it in the right way, because this family has a big problem and they have to live a normal life, and without this thing they couldn't do it. So I hope that these 3 points will be in our future, but the main thing is that we have to collaborate, and only teamwork will be helpful for our patient. Thank you very much for your attention.
So waiting for Alexandra to set up technical problem with her presentation. I want to thank Professor Squarcia Steve Sanders, Dr. Hagler, who is not here for this meeting. And the main topic of this session is how to keep on going with the meeting in the future, and how we are seeing the future of our profession, and how we are thinking to deal with in the next 5, 10, or 15 years. And standing on what Francesca said before, there have been a very huge accumulation of knowledge in the field of pediatric cardiology, and we have to keep on promoting and diffusing this knowledge at a high level, not only for us, but also for the next generation. And there are, on my point of view, two principal aspects: the teaching problem in the future and the clinical aspect. The clinical aspect is that we have to keep in mind and try and transfer to the young generation that there are some points that has not changed. It is important to know the embryology, the anatomy, the physiopathology, and the clinical aspect of the congenital disease. I've seen that Alexandra is already. You have the floor.
You finished? No, you can go on if you want.
Oh, thank you. So that's an important point of view that we have to stress with the university to keep the young, to keep the student focused on this aspect. And also the clinical aspect is very important because there are a lot of instruments that have been acquired in the diagnosis and the treatment of the congenital heart disease. But these instruments are a lead. They are not the answer to the problem. They are instruments to get the answer. And we have to teach and to give to the young colleagues that the instruments are not the only response they have to give to the patient. They have to use the instrument because they have to learn how to treat the patient, not only to know how to approach the disease.
So I don't know if people are still awake. It's the end of the day. And what you just witnessed, you probably have seen me distressed here, is I've been a victim of the firewalls of the hospital. Too much encryption, too much security, too much protection, and the risk was that I was not able to present anything. Well, I mean, I would have been talking, and there is nothing special in the slides, but this is actually an issue. My Macintosh decided to die the night before I left, so I have to bring my hospital computer, and that's not a good idea. Anyway, I didn't want to, my slides are purely some provocation, and the reason for putting things in writing is because if people wake up in between a few words I say, they might see the captures, the line, and it might just be used as a stimulus for the discussion. So the title of the round table is Future of Congenital Heart Diseases and Future of Parma Meeting. And as you can see, we are all cardiologists from different backgrounds, different, even cultural exposure if we want, and different training. And I think this is really enriching. And probably if I would have given this talk after the talks I heard today, it would have been slightly different, I think, because there has been so much learning by integration of science and art, actually. And it really helps you to look at things outside the box. What can we learn from each other? How can we do things differently? I didn't want to ask any question to Luigi or make any comment, because I think we can all comment on that, and quality of life really matters. So I'm an adult cardiologist as opposed to fetal and pediatric. I see a lot of these aged person We take children or patients from the age of 16 onwards. So my patients are anything from 16 years of age to 85. So it's a good range, a good representation of acquired diseases as well. So I think as the population ages, and Francesca has shown this beautifully, and we really have to be mindful of metabolic and acquired cardiovascular diseases and the prevalence of that. We all need to be aware of this. And also be mindful that is the health-related quality of life that matters. It's not the fact that patients survive, but how they live the life that they have the possibility to live. And so how can we improve that? And we're going to talk briefly about this. And then teaching and training, obviously, that's always there. And as I said, it's a panel open to discussion and research. And I might give some ideas, but I would really be happy to hear from you. And we have wonderful people helping and taking down and writing down the ideas. So in terms of lifestyle, is what Francesca just said, 90-95% of congenital patients reaches adulthood, as opposed to 20% of pre-surgical era. And there is a lot of misconception, especially as we heard this morning beautifully explained in terms of safety to exercise and what they can really do, what patients can do. There is a very high incidence of anxiety, depression, low self-esteem, post-traumatic stress disorders, and these are real problems, the problems that often we struggle to face and we struggle to actually tackle because there is not enough support for these patients. And so what are the issues? So in terms of lifestyle, issues are patients' education, and that's very important. Patients have no idea of, for instance, food value, quality, why doing what I'm doing, exercise, problems of resilience, problems with compliance, infrastructure, logistic as well, where people live. Philip earlier on just said how difficult it was for the parents to drive an hour their own children so they could have a singing session. The logistic is important, resources and cost. So I'm just putting them their ideas for us to talk about it. Some potential solutions are this multidisciplinary approach, which Francesca has already spoken about, the role of dietitians, sport physiologists, or physiotherapists, the specialist nurses. They're really key people in the ACHD team, cardiologists, psychologists, and so on. What could be the role of home monitoring, gadgets, AI, use of devices and tools for the autonomic nervous system function, stimulation, and so on. And of course, having a vision in the future and what would be actually the cost for the NHS or for the healthcare providers if we actually work more for prevention. And last but not last is how we apply all this to patients who live in less privileged countries. As I said, I'm not here to give solutions, but just to stimulate the discussion. In terms of teaching and training, I think the mentorship is very important. As Francesca started her conversation with us, she immediately thanks Stephen. And I think if we are here, it's somehow because we've been inspired by some people who have been and played a key role in our life. And are we doing this? Are we this person for the young physicians that are actually trained nowadays? And here, empathy, here is collaboration, is communication, which is really key. And transmitting our knowledge, which is not only what they can learn on books or what they can learn in the cath lab or in theater. Educating, and I had a very nice chat earlier on about the lifestyle. Education starts from the physician. We cannot pretend the patients are going to engage in lifestyle changes if we don't know anything about it. And then there are some people who are very sensitive to this topic, but other people and other physicians who couldn't care less. So the important thing is what the echo, the ECG, or the MRI show, but what is outside the box. How are we inspiring people to change? That's really important. And then in terms of training opportunities, the visual, again, I'm going from one topic to another because this came to my mind really quickly just when I was trying to think of what we could talk. The visual intelligence or the 3D intelligence is different from person to person. How can physician be helped? And here we have 3D printing, augmented reality, virtual reality can help interventional cardiologists, it can help surgeons. And so in terms of future, this is also where we are heading toward. More hands-on opportunities, and I think my father has given a beautiful example yesterday on how can we offer more hands-on opportunities. We live in an era where there is a lot of suing, blaming, and people cannot do on the patients what you guys were able to do maybe 30 years ago, and that's not possible any longer. So more hands-on opportunity in an artificial lab, in an artificial theater, so that we can train a physician. And sharing knowledge with less privileged countries. In terms of tools, online platforms are very helpful, seminar courses, but here a very important, I would say, ethical question. Why would it have costed me 1,186 euros to join the ESC Congress this year in London 2024? I think it's too much, and we shouldn't be asked to pay this much to be able to improve our knowledge and offer a better care to patients. So that's something that I think we should all do something for. And that's, I don't have a solution, but something to work. 3D printing, virtual reality, networking are very important. And I don't think we need to start with big projects. We can even just think, what do our colleagues in less privileged countries need as support? Teams meeting, discuss the cases, come up with some solution together, compare knowledge. A center may be doing a 120 fontan in I don't know how many years. Another center might have done just 3 or 4. They might need help in looking after these patients. Nowadays, especially with COVID, we can communicate with the rest of the world. Have these trainees coming, observing us, not having a fee to pay to be resident in a hospital where they can learn. I think knowledge and transmission of knowledge should be for free. This is purely an example of virtual realities just because I work in a center where they use it a lot, but I like the graph, and the surgeon actually really were helped by using this gadget and tool, which I found a little bit cumbersome, to be honest, but actually apparently it helps in planning surgical technique. Teaching and training for patients and family, very important, better education for better compliance, and we've been talking about this a lot this morning as well. With adults, it's also, I think, quite a tricky but not impossible topic. They listen to you, they need to be listened, and actually we need to make a difference in their life by guiding these people. Tools, patients, family-centered organization, consortium, also in terms of online platform for patients comes, I heard this morning, I just add this because I love the idea of having opportunity to spend time together, to learn from each other, to normalize the experience that these people feel, that they live with other people who have the same issues and actually they can be happy, they can have a life. It's very important. Seminars for patients also run by patients themselves and healthcare providers together, and so on, virtual reality and so on. Some research idea, and here probably more would be nice to hear from you. We know that there are lots of differences in social determinants of health and delivery of care that has disproportionately affected communities, and the surgical outcome, morbidity and mortality are definitely higher in less privileged countries and population. How can we improve the outcome in these countries? How can we help? So here we're here to debate. Use of registry and databases, I think this is very important because publishing data on a small cohort of patients, especially with rare diseases, is not the greatest idea. I think the SCMR community is quite good in that. They run these studies across multiple centers where there are large databases that can be shared and people can learn together from data analysis and projects that can be run on the same databases. There is a growing importance, as I said at the beginning, of health-related quality of life, which includes, as we heard very beautifully explained this morning too, physical, psychosocial, social, emotional, social, and educational employment spheres. So research on this area. And then quality improvement projects and biotechnologies. These are just some ideas, but there is a lot there, and I think it would be nice to hear what you think in all this. Thank you. No, well, this is the last time I travel with a hospital computer. Too many firewalls, too many encryption, too many security. Probably coming here.
I will try not to bore you that much, but it is fascinating that almost all of these younger colleagues than me pointed out how important it could be to make a step back, going back to basic science in training, because starting from anatomy, embryology, physiopathology, or pathophysiology, sorry, it is definitely important in the cultural evolution of a young doctor. Of course, I have to thank my master, Professor Squarcia, because he invited me in this outstanding, always outstanding meeting, and I am honored to have joined these younger colleagues. I found very nice that another point that was highlighted is that the professionals in pediatric cardiology have all different backgrounds. This is a very nice aspect to me, because this means, as a consequence, that, to my estimation, these kind of meetings should be extended, as somebody said, extended to cardiologists dealing with sports, family practitioners, neonatologists, pediatricians, general pediatricians, because if is it true, and it's true, that pediatric cardiology is a kaleidoscopic matter, this means that many aspects of the pediatric cardiologist culture must be involved in these kind of meetings. The most frightening idea that I heard today was from Gigi Festa, who remembered us a very important aspect, that the intervention of Fontaine today could not be planned nor realized because of legal implications. And this is a huge break to the progress of science, because we are going toward a future in which a lot of procedures are planned and categorized and validated in a general way, the same for everybody in every nation, but there is less freedom for thinking, for understanding the reasons of the emerging of a congenital heart defect. AI will help for sure. Everybody will apply in the next future. And me personally, I say, let's wait and see what really AI will give us. I don't want to bore you anymore. And I give the microphone to Steve. Thank you, Steve, for giving me the microphone as first.
So we heard some really very interesting ideas here. One question that I have, I'd like to know if we continue this course, and Umberto told me earlier that he was inclined to do so, which I certainly agree with. I think it could be good. But I want to know, who's our target audience? To whom should we pitch this? I mean, is this for practicing pediatric cardiologists or surgeons, or is this for junior people who are just getting started in the field? I mean, somehow medical students seem a little bit inexperienced to benefit much from really discussion of real cardiology aspects, but the quality of life, the humanitarian aspects certainly should start in medical school. So that's my question to you. To whom should we pitch this if we do this again?
Yeah, as I proposed in my short talk, yeah, I will extend it to the youngest part. Of course, opening also to expert pediatric cardiologists that will be amazed to share the 3 beautiful days also with social events and everything. But I mean, the real target it's really the young people. So for medical students, of course, it's not so easy to follow everything, but it's just a problem of to be inspiring. Because now that I have a lot of medical students now in my unit that are volunteering, because it's not, of course, in their normal routine obligatory stuff. And they are astonished to discover this world, because it's absolutely a totally different world that it's not at all in the routine program university, even in cardiological specialization or fellowship.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. I mean, I decided to be a pediatric cardiologist in medical school from experiences there. So I think that may be right, that maybe medical school is an appropriate target for this.
And the problem in Italy that we are the only country in Europe that we don't have training in pediatric cardiology for the moment. So we are still cardiologists or pediatrician, and then we choose to volunteer in somehow and to train.
If I may say, to connect to what Francesca, one of the ideas to involve this younger would be perhaps to open a poster session or an oral communication abstract, just to give access to their voice as well.
And I agree. I think it should be open to everyone. I think this meeting has given me some new ideas, which is quite nice. I'm not a young physician anymore, but I think I will go home. I will go home with some new ideas, and I think the networking is very important, because people talk to each other. And then the remaining communication, they can start projects together. They can, if they have difficult cases, look, can I discuss something with you? And that's easily done. That's extremely important. So networking for the physician is really important. And then a student or trainees, everyone welcome. If a medical student decides to subscribe for a meeting like this, it means he has interest, he wants to learn more. There were 2 young chaps yesterday, and I thought that they were and I'm sorry, but I don't know the extended family, but I thought they were the children of the lady who hosted us last night. So I said, do you live here, guys? And I said, no, we're medical students. And I found that really nice. I said, well, just two of you? Yes, it's quite surprising because the meeting is here in Parma. You have a university, it would be nice if they could join. And actually it was them to say, if there is not enough physical space, we could join online. And that would open the door, publicizing the meeting outside the doors internationally, and people can link in, and that's really beautiful. They can bring contributions as well from all over the places in the world. But the physical presence is important for everybody, all ages.
Just to stress what you were saying, we have Lorenzo, who is coming from Milan to attend the meeting. He's a medical student. So.
Yeah, that's, Gigi, you wanted to comment? That mic doesn't work. So
I want to ask a question to Chiara Bertolazzi, that spoke about young doctor lack of motivation. I have some idea, but I don't want to
I have many ideas, but I shouldn't speak out either. So
I wait yours. Could you? No, I want to know your opinion about, or the round table opinion.
Well, so I don't know if you were, I talked about this last year a little bit because I gave this presentation about burnout. And so I had started talking about burnout in physicians in the United States. And then I went on to talk about burnout in physicians in Italy. And so the reasons, at least in the literature, if you look at the literature, and then we can comment, other experiences as well. So based on the literature, it's very long working hours, the fact that we are, the physicians, I think, after Greece, we are the less paid in Europe. And in general, there is just 6% of our GDP is invested in healthcare every year, and it's the lowest in Europe. So there's a general lack of resources, straining working hours, low salaries. And again, I feel like probably there's a lack in training as well. So this is what comes out in the literature, and some of this I've experienced on my, on my skin coming back from the States, because I trained in Italy and then in the States, and then I came back to Italy. So some of these were my struggles as well. So I can speak on that, but you probably have other opinions as well.
Alessandro doesn't allow me to.
I was sure there would have been a comment.
If you is a doctor and they ask you to see 10 patients in the one morning, most of them are inappropriate consultations. This is one of the best way to demotivate people. So, what is the cause of that? Is financialization of medicine. So, one of the reasons.
Fear of malpractice, defensive medicine.
Yeah, and defensive medicine. Okay. Then the second, you have been in the underdeveloped countries. I know many of them. Me, Sandro, help a lot. There doesn't exist under motivation. Why? Because they cure sick people. Here we cure risk factors. This is much different. We care about risk factor and not illness. This is the difference. That is not wrong, because risk factors means prevention, but be careful.
I mean,
Depends on, but that's a different discussion.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, right. And no, I understand your point, and I think that's right. So the other question is, should we try to make part of this program inviting a certain number of young people from developing countries to participate in the program, and then go back both for, not only for learning, but more for forming relationships with potential mentors and potential people to help once they're back in their country. We tried a few years ago to establish a bit of a network and have sort of a call schedule to discuss patients, and we did it for a little bit, but it got to be, I think, so burdensome for the people who were in the other countries working that it just stopped. But I think maybe if you really meet someone in person, it may be different. So I don't know if it may not be possible. We would have to see what the finances of it all are. But is that something we should think about? Do you think that's a worth? I mean, or is that just, being sort of treating ourselves rather than doing anything beneficial for other people?
I think you would be planting seeds, right? We need to start somewhere, and even if we do something little, it's better than nothing. And it's the same thing.
Sometimes that's true, sometimes it's not.
Yeah, no. But from experience, I mean, London offers a little bit of this because it's a cosmopolitan country, and there are lots of people from Africa who comes from Asia, who comes for training. And then they go back to their own countries, but they remain in touch. And so, and then the collaboration starts, and then they might send fellows and so on. They made the first move. Maybe they come with young children. Maybe they came with a family, or maybe without the family because they were uncertain about financial situation and so on. But once the network and the connection are established, I think there is the ground to build up something.
Yeah, go.
I had an experience with Professor Franzoni, with the medical student. I did the reverse experience that with the university, we sent some students from here to Cameroon to have experience in low-income country, to learn how to deal with medicine without some types of means. And because of the COVID, we have to stop. But there are a lot of students asking for rebuilding this kind of experience. I think that building this network is very important. And if we meet with people working in other setting, it will be very useful going through the way Alexandra was saying, to share knowledge and give the opportunity to our colleagues to grow up.
Okay, does anyone else have any comments or suggestions? Yes, Ruth. Yeah, that's perfect. Yes, that's definitely what we must do, is involve that group in the next program. Other, Umberto, any comments on your part? Margarita?
Semplicemente dire che bisogna prendere in considerazione ancora prima forse degli anni di università che l'approccio dei giovani al lavoro è diverso dal nostro.
Forse è true.
Vogliono lavorare bene, ma vogliono anche il loro tempo per altre cose, la famiglia in primis.
Certo.
E quindi bisogna cominciare a offrirgli la possibilità di fare un lavoro qualitativamente di alto livello senza rinunciare alla famiglia.
Sì, la vita. La vita.
Qualità di vita
sì. Per professionale, sì. Certo. Other? Okay. You need to turn.
Sorry, just a closing remark that we vote for a June meeting, so a summer meeting.
Yeah, we're right there with you, I tell you, yeah.
So June 2026 normally.
Okay, very good. Okay, thanks
It's
everyone.
too short.
And thanks all of our members of our panel here. This was terrific. We really appreciate the obvious amount of time and effort you put into this was quite significant, and it shows, and we really appreciate it. So thank you all, and 7 o'clock for the buses. Yeah, both in Stendhal and Toscanini, 7 o'clock. 19.
In front of Toscanini Hotel and in front of Stendhal Mercure Hotel at 7 o'clock. Thank you very much.